morning, everybody. Welcome to Encounter Church. We're really glad you're joining us today from your home or wherever you find yourself. And we actually would love to know where you are, who you're watching with. So on the comment section on the chat, would you let us know, hey, what neighborhood you're in and also maybe who you're watching with? And that's just a great way for us to know who's tuning in this morning. For our service, we're going to do a couple of songs, and then you're going to hear a message, and then we're going to celebrate communion together. And for that, we would love for you to participate and be a part of that. So all you're going to need today is some basic communion elements, some bread or a cracker of some sort, and then either some wine or some grape juice that you can use for communion. And actually, when you do that, we would love if you maybe take a picture of your communion setup and just use the hashtag communion at home and tag us. And then we want to share that in our Instagram stories, in our Facebook stories, and show all the different ways in which we're uniting online and sharing communion with that. So enjoy the service, and I'll see you very soon.
Good morning, Encounter. We're so glad that you're here with us this morning online. We're going to start the morning off by singing a couple songs, and we're going to learn today about leaning into the mission that God has given us, and what that looks like, and mostly how we look to Jesus for that. So would you sing with us as we look towards his grace this morning together?
Grace, what have you done? Murdered for me on that cross, accused in absence of wrong, my sin washed away in your blood. Too much to make sense of it all. I know that your love breaks my fall. The scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one besides you. Forever the hope in my heart. Death, where is your sting? Your power is dead as my sin. The cross has taught me to live, and mercy my heart now to sing. The day and its troubles shall come. I know that your strength is enough. The scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one besides you. Forever the hope in my heart.
Yes, you are.
Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one besides you. Forever the hope in my heart. And it's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of your love that my soul will live. And it's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of your love that my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one besides you. Forever the hope in my heart. Oh, to be like you, give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one besides you. Forever the hope in my heart.
This is my prayer in the desert, when all that's within me feels dry. This is my prayer in my hunger and need. My God is the God who provides. This is my prayer in the fire, in weakness or trial or pain. There is a faith proved of more worth than gold, so refine me, Lord, through the flame. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. Oh, you are here. This is my prayer in the battle, when triumph is still on its way. I am a conqueror, co-heir with Christ, so firm on His promise I'll stand. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. All of my life, in every season, you are still God. I have a reason to sing, I have a reason to worship. I will bring praise, I will bring praise. No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and He is here. You are here. This is my prayer in the harvest, when favor and providence flow. I know I'm filled to be emptied again. The seed I've received I will sow.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, my name is Joel. I'm the lead pastor here at Encounter, and we're really glad you're joining us today. We're in the middle of a series called Lean In. And the idea of the series is pretty simple. We believe that moments of crisis, like the one right now that the whole world is facing, present us both with dangers and opportunities. And this series is about how do we seize this moment and really redeem this crisis and lean into the things that matter. So we've talked about leaning into God, we've talked about leaning into community, and today I want to talk a little bit about this idea of leaning into mission, and leaning into the mission that God has for the church and the mission that God has for each of us as followers of Jesus. Today is also Palm Sunday. And Palm Sunday historically is the beginning of Holy Week. This is the day that historically the church remembers Jesus entering into Jerusalem. And if you're familiar with the story, Jesus enters into Jerusalem kind of like acclaimed as a king. People think he's a coming Messiah. And in 1 week, things go terribly wrong and Jesus ends up being crucified. So we're kind of like looking at both things today together. So if you have a Bible, open it in the Gospel of John. And I'm going to be reading a section from John chapter 12. And I'm going to start reading on verse 12. This is the Gospel of John. This is what it says. The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it is written, do not be afraid, daughter Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. At first, his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him and that these things had been done to him. As I said earlier, Palm Sunday kicks off Holy Week, and it's a day we remember the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem. Some people call it the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. If you know a little bit of the background story, Jesus has just performed the most powerful of his miracles. He's raised a man from the dead. One of his best friends, Lazarus, dies, and after 3 days, Jesus shows up and he resurrects Lazarus, and people, start spreading those news wherever they could. Because if you were there and you had just seen a man raise somebody from the dead, you would do the exact same thing. So the message of Jesus doing that is just spreading. And the people of Israel at the time, they were expecting a Messiah. Messiah was this anointed king that was going to come and liberate them from the Roman oppression. And they're hearing about this guy who's doing all these miracles and is gaining this popularity and this following. And they're hearing that this guy just resurrected somebody from the dead. So everybody's thinking, this is our guy. So Jesus is walking into Jerusalem and he's really being acclaimed and received as he was a king. Now, what's interesting is that if you're familiar with the story of Jesus, you know that that story is going to go terribly wrong in the next 6 days. And Jesus is going to be crucified and betrayed and, he's going to die. And what's interesting too is seeing how Jesus reacts and when Jesus processes this whole story. If you keep reading the passage, some people, right after this happens, some people approach some of the disciples of Jesus and they want to meet with Jesus and they want to see him and talk to him. And there's a point where his disciples are kind of like approaching Jesus and asking him, hey, these people want to meet with him. And Jesus gives him the most bizarre response you will ever hear to somebody asking for a meeting. He says this is John chapter 12, just a little bit down on verse 23. Jesus replied, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Jesus is very aware of what's about to happen. And it's fascinating because you can kind of like read Jesus processing this whole thing aloud, right? Like there's basically what's going on is Jesus is coming and he's very popular at this time. People want to meet with him and the disciples are probably excited. Like, man, this is our time. We're like, really, really hot right here. We're popping. Like everybody's into us. And Jesus is trying to tell his disciples, actually, no, you have no idea what's about to come. And it's interesting because Jesus doesn't ignore how difficult this time is. A lot of times when we read stories about Jesus like this, if we're familiar with the story of Easter and you believe in the resurrection of Christ, this seems a little bit less important. It's kind of like a blip in the radar, like, poor Jesus, he died and then he resurrected. But that's how Jesus processes it. For Jesus, this is serious. This is the most difficult thing he's going to do in his human life. And he says, my soul is troubled. And what am I going to do? And it's interesting because it's almost like you can even sense like the sense of Jesus processing, I could back down. Should I back down? I'm not sure if I can do this. And at the same time, you see Jesus pressing through and saying, no, this is what I came to do. This is what my Father called me to do. I came here for this hour. That there's that tension. Jesus is in a moment of crisis. And in this moment of crisis, Jesus is presented both with the danger of stepping back and quitting and giving in because he's worried, or with the opportunity to lean into the mission that he had, the mission that his Father had sent him for, and press through with it and keep going through with what God had sent him to do. We see the whole thing play out in there, right? And there's a couple things that I think are interesting, in this story. The series that we're doing, Lean In, is about that same idea, right? About the moment of crisis and about both danger and opportunity. And I think that in the same way that Jesus feels that for his mission, if we're Christians, if we're the people of God, if we're the church, then the mission of Jesus, guess what? Is also our mission. And yes, we're not called to, die on a cross. That's the work that Jesus did. We don't have to do that because Jesus did it. But the mission of serving the world, of loving the world, of sharing the good news of the life of Jesus, that's still our mission. And a lot of times what can happen is that because we are online now and we don't get together and we don't get to interact with people the same way we used to do, that we can tend to think, well, let's put that on pause. And let's just kind of like tune in once a week and just, that's church. But what I would argue is that actually this moment of crisis that the world is going through right now presents us with the most important opportunity to lean into the mission that God has given the church. There's a couple of things that I think it's interesting. This is the first one. In the passage, Jesus says, my soul is troubled. And I think that one of the dangers and one of the problems that we have right now is that we really don't know how to process this. So I've done this and a lot of pastors have done this, and I think it's well-meaning. We're trying to preach encouragement and hope, and we're talking about not fearing, and we're talking about, don't give in to anxiety and fear. Why? Because we care for you and we don't want you to be afraid and we don't want you to be worried. But on the other end of that, we've all experienced real meaningful losses. And this has been a real difficult time where a lot of people are hurting. A lot of people are hurting physically. People have lost their lives. People have lost loved ones. People are hurting economically significantly. And we have to create a space to process that and to mourn that. And maybe, you're not hearing that from me and you're thinking, well, maybe I should feel guilty if I'm feeling anxious and worried. I just want to tell you, no. Because Jesus doesn't. Jesus allows himself to say, my soul is troubled. This week, John Krasinski, who used to play Jim Halpert in The Office, he posted this video on YouTube. It was really cool. It's called Some Good News. And he's basically doing like this kind of like fake newscast from his house. And, what he's doing really is showing all these clips of good things going on in the world, right? Like one of my favorite ones is showing all of these different people clapping and thanking, the medical professionals are serving us so well and really, putting their lives at risk and pressing through to care for the people that need it the most. And you have astronauts that are clapping, and then deep sea divers that are clapping, like all sorts of people. It's an awesome thing to watch. And, they have all these different things of how people are, reaching out for connection in the middle of this difficult time. And there's one in particular that I was watching, and it's this elderly couple. And you can tell the wife is very sick. She's in a hospital bed. And her husband can't be with her in the same room. So he's through this glass window looking into her room. And they both start singing Amazing Grace together. I don't know what it was so bad, but I'm watching this. I'm in my laptop last night, just watching this with just tears in my eyes. And I finally feel like I broke down and let the weight of what's going on really hit me. And I kind of just grieved the situation and just lay it out. My soul was troubled because of what's going on. And maybe your soul is troubled too. Maybe you're feeling the grief of this. And what I want to tell you is, it's okay. It's okay to feel the way you feel right now. Jesus felt that way too. You're not alone. Now, this is the thing though. Even though Jesus' soul is troubled because of what's going on, because what's about to happen to him, Jesus doesn't let that paralyze him. And we actually see this idea of danger and opportunity play on Jesus very, overtly. Jesus says, first of all, what should I say? Father, save me from this hour. He says, should I quit? Should I retreat? Should I pull back? Should I say, you know what? Forget about it. This is too hard. It's too difficult. It's too painful. These people aren't even worth saving anyway. I'm just giving up on this whole thing. But Jesus doesn't do that, does he? The next line he says what? He says, no. It was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. What Jesus is doing? Jesus is in this moment of crisis, choosing not to retreat, not to back down, but to press forward. Why? Because of the mission that he had. Jesus is leaning into his mission, and that's what propels him through the moment of crisis that he's going through. And I'm sharing you this story with you today because I feel like we are on the same place. As a church community, we believe that part of what it means to be a Christian is to be representatives of the kingdom of God, to be carriers of the good news of Jesus. And that takes all sorts of different ways. It's how we love people. It's how we care for the people around us. It's how we show compassion and mercy and forgiveness. It's also how we share the story of Jesus, how we invite people into that story and tell them of what we have seen Jesus do in our lives. And at a moment like this, it's easy to feel like we really can't do much of any of that, and we kind of back down from that, and we think that it's not really the time. The thing though is that of all the times in our recent history when people have needed to hear some good news, when people have needed to hear some words of hope, some words of truth, when people have needed to hear that there's something more to this life, that death doesn't have the last word, it's now. And we have an opportunity to share those good news in tons of different ways, right? At the most very basic level, there's people in our lives that right now maybe need just somebody to come alongside with them in community. Maybe the most loving thing you can do this week is just to send somebody a text message and say, hey, I'm thinking of you. How are you doing? Maybe there's people in your life that you know that they need for you to be praying for them. But it doesn't have to stop there, right? It goes beyond that. Maybe there's people in your life that you can help in ways that you don't even know. I'll give you maybe a silly little example. Couple nights ago, we're having this meeting with the leadership of our church, and we're getting ready for it, and kind of via Zoom. Obviously, we're all from home, social distancing. But my wife steps out of the room, takes her laptop, and after the meeting, I say, "What was that?" She said, "Well, there's a girl in our neighborhood that her birthday was today, and she couldn't have a birthday party, so I helped her with our Zoom account to set up a virtual birthday party with some of her friends." Cost us nothing to do that. And it makes all the difference in somebody else's life. It's just the thing right now, particularly because of the new regulations that the mayor has passed, that we should just stop, forget about it, just retreat, stay home. And maybe it's true. Maybe that's the number one thing that how we're loving our neighbors, right? We're staying home and not trying to reach out. But what I'm saying is I think that there are ways, even now, in which we can share good news, in which we can join the mission of God in the world, in which we can encourage people and love people and share with them about the God that loves them. Now, the other thing, too, is that social distancing is not going to last forever. And when this is over, the effects of what's going on, they're going to keep going. There's going to be people that are going to be affected in many different ways, from, psychological and emotional effects to financial effects. This is going to be a long process to recover. And we get to maybe now prepare for the opportunity that we're going to have, that we're going to be able to love on people. We're going to be able to be generous with people. We're going to be able to serve people around us in as many ways as we can. If anything, moments of crisis create the opportunity for us and for others to love and to serve and to share the mission of God. As a church, we're trying to figure out what that would look like for us. And we're a small church where we're still trying to, figure out with our limited resources, what can we do? And the first step we're taking is this. We've set up a section on our website. If you go to encounterdc.com /COVID-19 help, and we've just trying to set up some initial ways in which we can just figure out how we can help. So there's a button if you need help of some sort. We want to know, and we might be able to help you. We might be able to connect you with somebody that can help you, point you to resources, but we want to know what your needs are. So there's a button, you can just click on it. It says, I need help. Just let us know how you've been affected, how you need help, and we'll try to do our best to help. Maybe you want to help, and maybe right now there's not much you can do because of the current regulations, but as that eases down in the following weeks, there'll be ways in which you can help. So if you want to go in, click on the button that says I want to help, and let us know how you want to get involved. Finally, we have as a church what we call a benevolence fund, and it's basically every month we set apart part of our offerings specifically to help people that are going to some sort of financial need in our community, make sure that we have a way to support people in need. And what we're going to do is kind of like devote all of that to help people in our church, in our own community during this. We're a small church, it's not much, but we want to be able to do what we can. And one of the things we're opening up that fund so that you can give to it if you want. And 100% of the money that goes into that fund, we're going to use to help people during this time. And that's just kind of like maybe a first step that we can take in this journey of living in mission for God and figuring out what that looks like right now. I don't think it's a coincidence that next week we celebrate Easter. And historically for the church, Easter is the ultimate good news, right? Easter is the good news that God hasn't given up on the world. That death and pandemic and anxiety and fear and financial instability and isolation don't have the last word of our lives. That Jesus has the last word. And the last word of Jesus is always a word of hope, and it's always a love, and it's always a word of resurrection and restoration. And that's the good news of Easter, the good news of the resurrection. And if there was ever a time when the world needed to hear this good news, is right now. There's a hunger for good news right now. The University of Copenhagen recently released a study that says that since the COVID-19 pandemic started, the Google searches for prayer and faith have skyrocketed. And even people that were not necessarily open to religion before are now just reaching out for something else. And as a people of God, we have this story of hope. We have this story of resurrection. We have this story of life. The reason why we're still doing this, we're recording our sermons and putting everything online, is because we want to keep putting this story out, because we believe that now, more than ever, it matters. And next week, as we celebrate Easter, you and us, we all have this opportunity to invite people into this story. And we want to invite you to join us in that. We're going to create a special event for Easter service. I want to invite you to share it. Like if you were inviting somebody to an Easter service in person, believe me, they don't have anything else going on that Sunday morning. They're home. And it's an opportunity for us right now to invite people and to share, hey, maybe you've never given this guy Jesus a consideration, but what about you hear him out for a second? There's hope in the story of Jesus. There's hope in the story on Easter. And that's some good news. And that's the mission of God, that we all get to join in. So we're going to set up an event on our social media that you can share. We're going to have stuff on our website that you can share. If you go to encounterec.com/Easter, there's going to be ways in which you can invite your friends. And we're going to have a big party, even though it's virtual online. It's going to be a big party. We're going to celebrate together next week, and I cannot wait for it. And this is a very practical way right now that we can join in mission. I want to close with this. Right before the passage that we read, so right before Jesus walked into Jerusalem, Jesus performs his most famous miracle before the resurrection. He actually raises somebody else from the dead, his friend Lazarus. And right before that, Jesus is in this other town when he hears the news. And he tells his disciples, hey, Lazarus is dead and we're going to go see him. And I've always found fascinating the words of one of his disciples. This is in John chapter 11. So verse 14, Jesus says, so then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. I've always found that line really interesting. The disciples don't die with Jesus, right? Jesus dies and the disciples are scattered and eventually they begin the church. But I think part of what the writer is saying is that, they were all into Jesus' mission now, wherever that may take. They were walking to Jesus. As Jesus is walking into Jerusalem, into his certain death, he's not walking alone. His followers are going with him. That's what it means to join Jesus into his mission. We're in the midst of this very difficult time, probably one of the most difficult times in recent history. You've pretty tired of hearing that say, but it's true. And we get, at this time, we get the privilege, we get the honor to join Jesus in his mission. We get the honor of joining God into his message of love and restoration and resurrection for the world. And that's something worth leaning into. I know times are hard. I know they're confusing and difficult. But let's not give up on the mission of God. Because Jesus did. And as his followers, we're invited to join him into that. Grace and peace. Every Sunday, as part of our worship, we celebrate communion. And for us, communion is this ritual that Jesus instructed his first followers to remember his death, which is what we also remember during Holy Week. And what I'd like to invite you to think today is that when Jesus says that for this reason he came, he was talking about the cross. He was talking about going to the ultimate sacrifice to show love and to redeem and to save people. And that's the thing that propels us into mission. The sacrifice of Christ, the love of Christ demonstrating his death on a cross for the good of the world. And that's the thing that moves us out, that calls us to serve others and to share the story of Jesus with the world. So today, as we are sharing communion, think about that. Think about that this was the mission of Jesus. This is the thing that Jesus pressed through for so that he could give us life. In the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11, the Apostle Paul, talking about communion, says, for I received from the Lord what I also passed on to you. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. So where you are, I invite you to take the bread or cracker that you're using. And remember, Jesus' body broken for us, broken for the sake of the world. Let's take the bread together. The Apostle Paul continues and says, in the same way, after supper he took the cup, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it, in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. So I invite you today to take the cup with me. You pray with me? God, our souls just fill up with gratitude for the love that you've demonstrated for us through your Son, Jesus Christ. For the commitment that Jesus had to your mission, that he pressed on in moments of crisis, in moments of difficulty, even when his soul was troubled. And our request today is that you would help us remember what Jesus did, and that your Spirit would fill us with encouragement and with hope and with energy to press through this moment and continue living on mission for you. In the name of your Son we pray.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Sing Jesus, Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, yes, we live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Sing worthy, yeah. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Yes, you are. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Yes, we do. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, yeah, we live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. And holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. And holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me.
Every Sunday during our service, we take a time to acknowledge giving and generosity. For us, this is as much a part of our worship of God as everything else that we do. So if you're part of the Encounter family and you give and you support financially the mission of God, the work that we're doing, we thank you very much for your generosity. If you want to make a gift, if you want to make a donation for the first time, we want to invite you to go to encounterdc.com/give, and all the information is there. You can make a one-time donation, you can sign up to do a recurring donation, and we appreciate your support during this time as we try to learn and figure out how we can be the people of God in mission for the world today. We also have a couple of announcements before we end the service. Number one, you heard me talk during the sermon about a couple of things that we have going on. One is encounterdc.com/COVID-19 help. And we're just trying to begin a way of learning what needs are there in our community, how we can help, how can be part of the mission of God during this time. And there's options to say, hey, I need some help. This is what's going on in my life, or I want to help out, and these are the ways I can help. If you want to give specifically to our benevolence fund that's going to go towards helping people in need, you can also give directly to that from that page. So definitely you want to check that out. And then the other thing is our Easter weekend. That is this weekend that's coming up. It's gonna be a little strange because it's online. It's our favorite Sunday of the year. We all want to be together, but right now we can't, and we're gonna try to do the best effort to make it a party, even though we are all online right now. So check out encounterdc.com/Easter, and that's gonna have all the information. And what you need to know is a couple things. One, we're gonna have a Facebook event that we want you to share, and the location of the event is your own house because we're transmitting our service online. But we want you to invite people, invite your friends, invite your coworkers, invite your family members. Doesn't matter where they live actually right now, because everybody can access it. But we really believe that of all times right now, people need to hear the message of Easter. We want to do our best to put it out there, and we want you to help us, share that with as many people as we can. So go to encounterdc.com/Easter, click on the Facebook event, and invite, as many people as you can, and help us put the word out for that. We're going to do a couple other things that weekend. One is we're going to move our regular Wednesday prayer meeting that we're doing in the evenings. We're going to move it that week to Friday, and we're going to have a special Good Friday Zoom gathering. And it's going to be a short thing. We're going to read a couple of scriptures. Remember the death of Jesus. I'll have a short reflection, and we'll share communion together online. It'll be a Zoom call so we can all see each other and be with each other. I think it's going to be very special, very meaningful. And I'm really looking forward to sharing that time with you guys that day. The other thing is, after the Easter service, we're actually going to have a Zoom after party. So the service will finish, we'll show it online, and then we'll have a link. It'll be on the chat that day, it'll be on our website. You can jump in right after, and we'll just have for a few minutes, see each other's faces, see how everybody's doing, and celebrate together, because it's a day worth celebrating. So those are the announcements that we have for this week, and we're really excited to be celebrating Easter as a church family. To close our service, we're going to have a word of benediction. All that benediction means is a good word. We live in a world that's constantly speaking bad words over our life, and church is the one community where a good word is always spoken over us. So, my brothers and sisters of Encounter, wherever you find yourself, may you know that you, as a disciple of Christ, have been called and have been empowered to join God in His mission in the world. May you not let this time discourage you or make you retreat from your mission, but may this time draw you closer to Christ and closer to the heart of God and closer to the mission of God. May you see opportunities in your life to spread love and to spread hope into the people that you're connected with. May you lean in to the mission of God this week, and may grace and peace be with you. See you guys next week.